and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's, I think, third inaugural lecture in our 5-lecture series. So before I give you a brief introduction to our inaugural lecturer this afternoon, I just need to say that in the event that there's a fire alarm, the stewards will guide you out of the twin components of Cherry's career: academic research, but a commitment to clinical practice. So in order to be awarded this title, Cherry, like the rest of our academic colleagues, has published lots of papers, brought in grants, but I think she's also been very committed to developing practice, but also been a trailblazer in developing joint clinical academic careers for allied health professionals. So these things were quite common in medicine, but it was people, Cherry and colleagues in her cohort, who developed these pathways for people from physio and OT. So she's has made a lasting impact in many ways. So Cherry joined us in 2007 after spending some time in clinical practice as a neuro-physiotherapist. And I think we can see from her first successful grant application when she was at the Royal Free has been a glass ceiling breaker by being the first non-medic to be awarded funding to do a PhD. So this is a very important, I think, illustration of how her career has developed and created opportunities and pathways for those who practice in many of the allied health professions to combine that with an academic career. So I think it's also important that, as well as academic papers, if we look at Cherry's CV and look at her career trajectory, she's very interested not just in academia, in writing papers, but in developing new researchers, but also in changing practice. So a key outcome from her PhD was changing the stroke services in the trust, in the Royal Free. And that is just one example of the kind of impact her work has had in developing clinical guidelines and all the other kinds of areas where we contribute. And Cherry is a very interesting person, as well as having her job at the Royal Free, so she still combines academic teaching and research at Brunel, has a clinical role at the Royal Free, also is part of something called BPACS, which I have to read out because otherwise I'll get it wrong. The Brunel Partners Academic Centre for Health Sciences, so another term which just trips off the tongue. But this is the focus here for Cherry, I think, is the third strand of her career, which is about developing capacity and bringing on new researchers. And I think this is really important that she shares her experience and her highs, and perhaps sometimes the things where we learn from experience. So it's remarkable for somebody who seems to have 3 jobs. She does have some spare time. I don't know where she gets it from. So has many and varied interests. As an animal lover, likes rugby, but doesn't quite support the right team. But you know. Oh yeah, you won't recognise from my estuary English accent, I'm one of God's chosen people. So I support Wales, who came second to Ireland. Very good. But has her huskies. And Cherry and I share a number of things other than a love of rugby, and that's a love of swimming, and particularly in cold water without a wetsuit. So there is something that must, perhaps to be a professor, this is now going to be on the application form. So I've known Cherry ever since I started at Brunel, and I cannot tell you how much pleasure, professionally, but also personally, it gives me to invite, and I'm going to say it again, Professor Cherry Kilbride to deliver her inaugural lecture, which is intriguingly titled Match of the Day to the University Challenge via Holby City. Cherry, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christina, thank you. And I've got so many people to thank for me being here this evening. But Christina, I remember distinctly with Muriel, who's also now a professor. This will be you possibly next year, so enjoy it. We both saw Christina arrive and went, we're just going to hang on her coattails and we're going to, yeah. So she's dragged me over the line, got me here, so thank you very much. And like I say, and lots of you in the room have played a really pivotal part in my career and me being here. And I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on a Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Some of you have come over high waters and things and everything come from, you know, the West Country, the North, over the wall from Scotland. We've got people online, wherever you are, Australia, Australia, New York. We've got people in Newcastle, Norwich, you know, so many different places. So thank you so much for joining online as well as in person. So, okay. Bit of audience participation in a moment. Who believes in miracles in this room? Thank you. Yes, yes. So I do, because otherwise I literally wouldn't be here. And Mary up there is one of my supervisors, and I was out walking with the dogs today and with my husband up there, and he said, "You're very quiet," which is unusual for me. And he said, "Are you all right?" And I went, oh yeah, Nana, you'll be feeling this soon as well. You know, I said, the last time I felt like this was when Mary was trying to have to keep me calm before my Viva. Just really weird, having this really entirely different sort of sense of something. But yeah, so I'm pleased that some of you do believe in miracles, because every day, they say, does hold the possibility of a miracle. And I am that living proof that if I can do this, so many of you, all of you could, yes. So, and the secret thing is that behind miracles is that the person performing them begins without any knowledge whatsoever of how they're going to succeed. And that's really, you know, I had no idea, never in a month of Sundays, that this is where, you know, I would be. But the miracle is that you start and you just get going. So, where did I start? Okay, they do say that, you know, when you're born, that, you know, the die is cast, you know, your character, you know, is there. And so, really, for me, back in the ear dot, it's nice and black and white, so you get the sense that it's, you know, quite old. You know, here I was, I'm being born into, you know, into an Irish clan, and I was due on the 17th of March, which, for those of you who don't know, is St. Patrick's Day. And I was also supposed to be a boy, and I was going to be called Patrick. So when I arrived just before St. Patrick's Day and I was a girl, they then called me Cherry, because I think they probably couldn't think of anything else, because thank you, Mum, up there in heaven. It's also called Cherry, so I've had the thing of being called Cherry B, which is actually for Bridget, but everybody thinks I'm the drink, Cherry B, which is probably why my son likes to drink a lot of it in the days gone by. So, you know, one could say that perhaps I was a bit, you know, sort of stubborn, impatient, you know, didn't listen, whatever. Anyway, that was me. But somehow I turned into this sweet, cute little thing, you know, butter wouldn't melt in my mouth, you know, all that sort of stuff. And if you really believe that, God, no. Anyway, apparently I was a chatterbox, you know, loved to talk too much, some people might say. You know, I had a great lot of curiosity. I've always, as Christina said, had a love of animals, you know, always wanted to bring home animals and things that needed looking after. And, you know, and it was just, and I was just really curious. Some people might say nosy. But, you know, it's like, what do you do to keep this child occupied? And, you know, what lots of families do. They come along and they say, yes, let's put them in the brownies. So, this is not quite me. But it could be me, actually. I've actually got a picture somewhere, and I thought, God, they look like my socks and stuff and everything. So anyway, so it was about starting at the brownies. So how long do people think I survived in the brownies? Any offers? 6 months. Oh, Demetrius, what was that?
1 day.
Oh, Steve, oh, you know me. Anyway, so yes, I went along, one day and thought, this seems, it's okay. I'm not sure about the uniform, but, and I don't think I'll get any badges, but, I'll come back again. Anyway, new to our sort of village where we were living, 2 new friends arrived. They were sisters. And I thought, back in that day, I thought they were from Africa, these 2 young girls, young like me, 7, 8, whatever. And so I thought, perhaps they'd like to come to the brownies with me. Because, it seems like fun, and I thought, they'd been adopted for what I felt like, or fostered by what I thought seemed to be like quite an elderly couple at that time. They were probably younger than me. And they were white, and whatever. And so I thought, come with me. So went along, introduced them to Brown Owl, and Brown Owl promptly went, no, they can't join. They're like, why can't they join? And it's just like, no, they can't join. So I called her a brown cow. So, yes, do you still want to employ me, those of you who are sort of like, And so we walked off, and, and she was hollowing after me, and I'm going to come and speak to your mother, and blah, 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 blah. So I went home. Thank you, Mum, again, for, bailing me out. And she said, no, you were right. You shouldn't have been rude. You shouldn't have called her a brown cow. She said, but, in things. So then it was like, okay, what do I do now? What is it that's going to sort of keep you amused, etc.? So, apart from just being Dr. Dolittle and bringing things home to be looked after and having a menagerie. So it was then that I sort of started to develop an interest in a particular programme. So I would go to bed, like a very good girl, on a Saturday evening and could be fast asleep, and then suddenly I would hear this music. And it would just make me get out of bed, and down I would start to creep. And then it would be, see if anybody, no? Oh, do I have to press this one? Hold on. It wouldn't be me without... So I'm going down the stairs, and I'm looking through the banister. Nobody knows I'm there, obviously. When football was proper football. Anyway, we like it so much, I'm going to go again. So, back keeping with my match of the day there, it was just like, God, what was it that I liked about it? It wasn't that I wanted to be a footballer. There were no female sort of, role models at that time. You just thought, what was it that sort of obsessed me? And it was one of these and one of these. It was the magic sponge with the magic water in the bucket. And I used to, and Steve, this is why it's football, not rugby. And not, it's because they used to lie on the floor, rolling around, like they were about to die. They don't do that on the rugby pitch. And, they're proper men. And so they used to just, rub it over, because they had nothing fancy in those days, because remember, I was very old. And then they'd jump up, and they'd be cured. And you'd go like, I want one of them. I want that bucket and sponge. That's what I want to do. So anyway, that was then, like say, the die was set really. And I wanted the magic, like say, magic sponge. I mean, I did also at some point want to be a nun, but clearly didn't. And those of you who know me and know what my sense of direction is like are ever thankful. And Rahul, you'll be really pleased, seeing you're a pilot. I wanted to be an air traffic controller. I don't know my left from my right, so it could have been a problem. Just hold on there, Rahul. I'll just go and ask somebody. Yeah. So no. Anyway. Oh, I'm never going to finish on time. Let's just keep going. Anyway, right. So then I'm thinking like, right, don't need very many qualifications for me magic sponge and bucket. So, you know, at school, let's say a miracle was needed for me, because this was my sort of typical school reports. Cherry's attitude is often uncooperative and talkative, clearly from my birth, you know, coming through. Uncooperative, being born on the wrong day, wrong sex, you know. And she must resist the chattering whilst I'm talking. How many students do I say that to now, sort of thing, you know, in terms of that? Yeah. Oh, and there has never been a display of real effort. So, and these are the good ones. Anyway, no, there is some hope here. Cherry can produce outstanding work when she wants. Cherry has a natural quality of leadership, which I sincerely hope she will channel in the right direction. I'm hoping I've done some of that now. And then from that, then this is the head of sort of big year or whatever. Mrs. Sheriff, and I wish I could find her again one day, but, you know, she'll be up there in heaven with you, Mum, so you can just sort of tell her. Yeah. Cherry's overall a disappointing report. Cherry is a capable girl, and I hope next year she'll give herself a chance to do herself justice. She'll regret it if she doesn't. Anyway, she obviously decided to put things into her own hand, and I got called to the office because she looked at my options. And it was like needlework, childcare, cookery, anything that didn't require study. So she went, you're not doing that, you're not doing that, you're not doing that. I fought with her over biology because they have to cut up animals, and I said, I'm not doing that. No way. So I said CSEs in those days, and I was, you know, had to therefore get a, you know, grade 1 or something for it. And so anyway, yeah, she did all of that, and so I was presented with this thing of different options. Next day in the assembly, and for once I was listening, I heard the headmaster say, if you're studying for 5 O-levels, you should think about going to university. And I sat there and went, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that's me. And it was like, I just never, ever crossed my mind that I could think about going to university. You know, it just wasn't in my, you know, in my house. It just wasn't, you know. So I then thought, oh, God, now I'm going to start studying. You know, how am I going to do that? How am I going to let face go, you know, like stroppy teenager? And so my form tutor, Miss Zembruski, still remember her name, all of those teachers, see Vicky, you go home and tell your husband about how transformational they can be. She knew what would push my button. So she just said, words are empty, Cherry, you've got to prove it. So I thought, sod you, I'm going to do it then. So anyway, so then I sort of buckled down and thought, yep, get on with it. And then I went to college. And, you know, and in the interim, did my A-levels. And at the same time, I thought, you know, I was still doing stuff with animals, and I was helping to feed the orphan lambs down on the farm. So it'd be me on a bike and my dog's coming down, you know, Dr. Dolittle again. And this is a hint to the future, Steve. This is one that I think we should research, the use of toilet rolls for splinting. Yeah, and this poor little lamb called Toilet Roll in the end, because that's what I called, was, I splintered his poor back leg with the toilet roll, which then had to be changed quite a lot of times, obviously, for obvious reasons. And but he did very well. So anyway, I had 4 of these lambs that I looked after and hand-reared. Couldn't bear for them, obviously, to go off and be an accompaniment to mint sauce. That was beyond, you know, sort of my whatever. So anyway, they eventually went to a family farm, and you can imagine there was my mother and I sitting in a car which wasn't an estate, and it wasn't a Land Rover, it was just a little saloon car with 4 sheep in the back. Anyway, clearly, yeah. So, you know, the die was set then that I was going to I was either going to be a PE teacher or be a physiotherapist, and I thought, I want to be a physiotherapist because without being a physiotherapist, I can't get my bucket and sponge. So that was it. Okay, so moving on to the Holby City part of the talk. Hello, it's my grandson. He talks as much as me. Yes, and he never stops eating either. But anyway, yeah, Holby City. So, Fiona. Oh, dear. So, St Thomas's Hospital. And I was looking up here, and it says something like they'd been caring for people for 700 years, needed £95,000 to keep the health service going, or the hospital going at that time. And, yeah. But anyway, are there any, well, Callie, you are nearly you were a student not so long ago, and there may be a few others of you in here, and you think your uniform's bad. You might think it's bad. Look at this. Look at that. Doesn't that just, you're so jealous, aren't you, Alison? Does it bring back memory? You know? And, yeah, so you've got your brown belt. You only had a white one if you were little. And not, you know, and then you got a brown one if you were, you know, done all your what we call carbs in those days. And I don't know if you can see, it hasn't got a pointer on, but Jackie, who's on the end of this end in brown, because we had these particularly lovely outfits, brown stripy things as well. We had these indestructible case skips, didn't we? Which just refused to be destroyed. And just in case you can't see me, that's me with all the hair. And Fiona, that's you. And, yeah, so anyway, one of the biggest things that was a problem for me now is that I don't see you see that St Thomas's joined with Guy's, which is like Spurs and Arsenal playing in the same place. And you just go like, nah, that's just not right. But anyway, so we all qualified somehow, and we had the ceremonial throwing of the brown skips off Westminster Bridge into the Thames. Very bad, you know, environmentally, but it was quite a long time ago, before bad climate, whatever. And they're probably still fit to be worn now. But anyway. So we qualified, and then I jetted off to Australia to go travelling. You jetted off to New York and went travelling. People saying to us, oh, you're going to ruin your career. You'll never get anywhere. Clearly, they were absolutely right. I did never get anywhere. And I think you did pretty well for yourself as well. So, yeah, they were wrong. Yeah. So, when I came back from travelling, I went back to South London because, you know, we nearly bought a house or a flat in Brixton, didn't we? And we'd have been rich by now if we'd have kept that. But anyway, we didn't. We went travelling instead. So I went back to South London, back to where I was sort of feeling at home. And my first job had been between St George's and St James's. St George's in Tooting and St James's in Balham. And it was great. And because I had a few debts, as you do, I took up a part-time job as to fulfill my dream, a part-time physio for a semi-professional football team. And guess what? I got to go on the hallowed turf of Wembley. It's just like, oh, my dreams come true, Christmases, birthdays, everything all at once. Just, yeah, brilliant, yes. So there I am, just in case you can't see me. You know, not many women in football in those days, and not so many even in these days here. But, you know, there I was. And this is my moment of fame. And I remember saying to the guys before the match, and they started, please, if nobody gets injured, please, can somebody fall over so I get to come on and use my sponge and bucket? And anyway, there was a genuine head injury, as you can see, the arrow pointing down to the head. And this really was a sign. It was a sign, Neve, you know, we talk about signs in our family. It was a sign that perhaps something else was afoot for me. So, back to the day job, George's and cardiac surgery. So in the days when we actually saw people before they went down for surgery and talked to them and told them about what to expect and to do a few breathing exercises, you know, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, this was a huge turning point for me because there was a lovely guy, a big burly man called Ron, who sadly had a massive stroke as he was having his coronary artery bypass grafts. Ended up in ITU, and his family obviously were very distraught. They were a very tight-knit family and very, you know, sort of concerned, obviously, about him. My medical colleagues were saying, you know, and telling them that, you know, to expect the worst, and us belligerent physios would be going like, no, come on, we'll be, you know, always advocating for the, you know, for the underdog. Anyway, we ended up, and it was almost like he was in this locked-in syndrome. And so while he was still ventilated, we put him on this special table. It's called a tilt table, straps, and you can start to help somebody come up and sit up. And yeah, some people down here will know what that's like, that torture. Yes, your moments, yes. And you know, he got well enough to go to a rehab unit. And you think, oh, fantastic, really, you know, really sort of felt good. And at that time, I then got onto my beloved sort of MSK rotation. So I was doing what I wanted to do. I was with my part-time football team. But something had been lit by that engagement with Ron. And I was in the gym one day, and then I heard this sort of, perhaps not quite as fast as that, coming down the corridor, or outside. And I turned around to look up, and it was Ron. And he'd come back to come and find me because he knew that I was somebody who was in his corner. And he came and gave me a big hug with his hemiplegic arm and sort of just said, you know, without you, blah, 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 and stuff. So it was really, a changing time for me. It was the fact that, you know, this is where I think my track certainly changed, and it went to, some of you will see, tracks sort of play on words. It's in neuro, your tracks go up to your brain. I won't go into a neuroscience thing now at the moment. And I was on that different track to the brain and to neurology. Next step, St. Bartholomew's Hospital, and a fantastic neuro placement of rotations there, neurosurge, big centres. And as a vegetarian, I've got the little cycling thing up there to remind me, little quips. I had to cycle through every morning through Smithfield's meat market. So you go like, I've already been cycling, and now I've got to take a big breath, because it smells terrible, you know. Oh, I'm vegan now, anyway. But, you know, and so cycled on through, and but beautiful hospital, loved working there. And just felt sort of like, you know, if any of you want to go to the, you know, there's museum bits that you can go to, brilliant, lovely. Look at the little young face. Anyway, so then, went to the other side of the district, Hackney, and went to what was known as the Eastern Fever and Smallpox Hospital at the Homerton Hospital in, like say, in Hackney, and the regional neuro. Sorry if it's bringing back bad memories. And it's almost like, Karen, it's almost like the ward. You know, I can see the ward now there, and I can remember that man hollowing after me, and I can't possibly tell you what he was hollowing after me as I was trying to walk off the ward, going like, that's not, you know, nothing to do with me. Lots of brain injuries. Yeah. And anyway, and then this was some of us. And there you go, Karen. There you go, there's your mum. Because that's where I met one of my best buddies, Karen. And we've been partners in crime ever since. Because those sorts of places, you really build really, you know, special relationships with people, because you go through thick and thin. And two of the people that were patients in that place at the moment are here today. So thank you so much for coming, Audrey and Rosie. And so brilliant. So Rosie, this is your bit, and I have got permission from Rosie to show this. And you're lucky, Audrey, I couldn't find, you know, any bits of you. But Audrey does make the very best Caribbean Christmas cake. And I've already told Audrey that I made my own first cake this year. So anyway, yeah. Anyway, back to the miracle that is Rosie. And this is where I think, in terms of my career, really got that obsession with contractures. But you'll see. Okay.
Well, the night of the accident, it was getting on for 2 years ago. I'd gone out with two girlfriends, and we went to a club. And that's it. I remember nothing about the club, but I've been told that we left all together. And two of us got knocked down, and the other girl, she cleared the road before I'd even got halfway across. When I came round, I was really in quite a bad way. I was in a wheelchair. Because at first I used to have to put a seatbelt on the wheelchair because I'd lost all the muscles in my back and I couldn't even sit. So I was in really quite a bad way. My actual injuries were broken femur, broken pelvis and hip, broken collarbone, collapsed lung, head injuries. So just about everything that could be broken was. I actually had stuck a couple of photographs on the wall beside my bed of me, how I was with the accident. And quite often at night before I went to bed I used to think, that is how I'm going to get back. I'm going to get back to that person.
Rosie, brilliant. Thank you so much for letting us share that. And, you know, and you're more stubborn than me, is what I can say. And so Karen, your OT, the time you know Karen's here and whatever as well. And so, yeah, absolutely amazing. And yeah, Rosie, when you came, because you'd been in a coma for 16 weeks, something like that, remembers people talking about her, then wanting to turn her off of the machine and wanting to sort of try to go, no, don't do that, but nothing would work because you're intubated, you can't say anything, etc. And so I said you used to just do the impersonation of the dying fly when you arrived, because that was the only thing you could do. You had an NG tube and stuff, and that was about it, really. So between you and Audrey, you were... yeah. I know, yeah, with all the stuff. So we had to do a lot of work with uncontracting your muscles and joints, which has got very stuck. And we continue that work today. And let's say my colleague Steve and Joe up there as well, where we've been doing work in that type of thing. Because, you know, it's like the onus is on us to try to find the evidence of what we said or what we think that we've seen in practice and that you know that works. And oh my word, manual handling in those days, wasn't it something? It's like, well, blimey. But God, I was going like, I'm so slim. And Rosie, you're a bit taller than me. Anyway, another miracle in the making. So a few years later, in 1991, Michael Watson came, and some of you who are older, will remember that there was an awful event, and there was some irony in the fact that it was at White Hart Lane, which is the home of the Spurs football ground, for those of you who are not familiar, because they don't have many fans. And Michael was an ardent Arsenal fan. Anyway, you know, terrible, you know, he couldn't sit, he couldn't do, he was really not very well when he came to us at all. And this was in the paper. They talked about, in the gym, they pummel him. Yeah. You know, they throw him around like a rag doll. Yeah, you know, I was his physio. He was just, oh my Lord. I was exhausted treating him. There's something about very toned muscles that go very spastic. And it was like very hard work. And look, and this was his words that he wrote in a book. And I have a physio who is really tough on me. Her name is Cherry, but I call her Killer. So I'm just really pleased that the HCPC didn't sort of hear about this, and he didn't explain that he only called her Killer because the fact of her surname was Kilbride. Anyway, yeah. So, you know, but he was another miracle, like I say, and, you know, and he had a testimonial at the Arsenal ground in 1993, and I was lucky enough to go along with Jill Dawson-King's, his OT, and, you know, we got taken up to the, you know, all the boxes, and it was just amazing, sort of brilliant day that we had, and he deserved it all. And then you can see him some years later, what was it, 30 years later, still back at the new Arsenal grounds, and, you know, you can see there in my very badly scribbled sort of thing of round, you know, he's there and he's immortalised there as well. And it's just really, I think the thing that I wanted to bring out here was that this is where my love for complex disability really sort of arose. You know, Ron started something at George's, and Rosie, Audrey, and people like Michael cemented it. And it really got my brain going again. Why are these things, you know, happening? What can we do? So it's just like, I thought, I've got to go back to, you know, do some more study. And I took up my MSc part-time and got that in neurology, like I say, in 1993, and and I was pregnant in that one, so I was amazed that I even managed to get myself over the line with it. But you know, and so that was it. It was really sort of just really set that whole scene and that whole brain going again about wanting to do things. And just to make sure that you haven't forgotten that I love animals, this was a bit of extracurricular activity when I was still at the Homerton or the Hackney, and so I used to catch feral cats, because when I arrived there, they used to kill the feral cats who were killing the rats, and then they'd kill the cats and kill the rats, and then it was a bit like, and so I said, well, why don't we get the cats to, you know, help keep the population down, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I got involved with something called SNP, which is Society for Neutering Islington's Pussies. And I could be found at any time of day, you know, catching cats, people calling the police on me, thinking like, you know, whatever. And we had some amazing local vets who used to do it for free and neuter them, etc. And one of our dear friends, Betty, can't be with us here tonight, but she did remind me when I said, oh, I'm thinking about what am I going to say. She said, are you going to tell them you put on my appraisal that I had to be on the cat feeding rota? And she said, and I didn't really like cats. I said, oh, I didn't know that, but anyway, yeah, there you go. Back to something a bit more educational. So I went to, after coming back from maternity leave, I then went to my beloved home of the Royal Free. And again, you can sort of see that, you know, I'm still a younger version of myself. And it was here, like I say, another, you know, continued in terms of, I was heading up the neuro service then at the time, and you know, loving it. And in those days, our stroke wasn't really on the agenda in terms of the way that it is now. Say to students, would you ever believe me, the fact that, you know, I'd have to run around sort of, it's a lot of floors at the Royal Free, isn't it? Up and down those stairs, and, you know, the lifts don't work, and, oh, there's a stroke survivor there, whatever. Anyway, so, you know, I was doing my clinical work. Then the boss left, the other one left, and then there was this big hole. And I remember when I said I talked too much, so they were looking for somebody to be interim director of therapy, and it was somehow I found myself going from leading a team of 12 into leading a team of whatever, 200, I don't know, you know, felt like 2,000. And yeah, but seriously, even though I was a reluctant manager, and not as good as my managers that are here, you know, in terms of who followed on from me, but what I learned there was so essential for my research going forwards, and also for my PhD, learning to navigate all of the different ways of politics, really. And this is the thing that I just wanted to, like, say, in terms of, you know, stroke. We never used to, you know, this wasn't the way it was, and it's only more recently it's become a medical emergency. And so for the fact that it was in 2002, just after the NSF for older people, for those of you who remember, and I think it was something guideline 5 or something 5, and it actually talked about stroke and the fact that we needed to treat people with stroke as an emergency. So I registered for a PhD, which was at City University of London, and Julienne, I believe that you're online, you were hoping to be with us tonight, took pity on me. And then Mary took pity on me. And then I had another one because I was so bad, I needed 3 supervisors, and she emigrated to Australia afterwards. So, you know, yeah. Like I say, this is Julienne, who, you're here, Julienne, even if you're not here in person, an amazing lady who got me over the line, like I say, with, along with Mary. And so my research at the time was around, you know, really how do we get evidence into practice? We were so far ahead of the curve in terms of all the things that people are doing now in terms of like co-production, co-design. You know, it was just, we were there, Mary. You know, well ahead. Yeah. So we changed our stroke service from being we had one of the highest mortalities in the UK into being the top UK stroke performing service. And we were recognised, the team were recognised for that with a Health Service Journal, which is quite prestigious for people working in the health service, award. And so some amazing people who were part of that team. Everybody deserves part of that. So that was amazing. I then got awarded my PhD later on from that, and Jackie, if you're online, this is Jackie. Jackie's floppy hat kept me going. All that I wanted was a floppy hat. I didn't really care about the rest. I just wanted one of those hats. And when I eventually then got a hat, my husband and I, you know, we went out, drank too much one day and ended up down somewhere very posh. And they looked at us like we were, like, you know, what was it, pretty woman? Like, who are you? And it's like my wife has got a PhD. And it's like, oh. Anyway, so I've got my own hats, which I regularly hoover in. Now you know I'm lying, because I don't hoover. And this is my dear mum. And it was quite funny, really, watching two gingers, which is where the gingers up there get it from, fighting at the bar to buy the first bottle of champagne. And Julienne, I told you it wasn't worth it. Just don't go and fight with that woman. Anyway, my mother won, of course, and so that was all good. So sadly, there were no opportunities for me to continue with my research because we didn't have these things like clinical academic posts these days, which some of my colleagues, Paul and Steph, forging your way forwards with them. So it was bittersweet, but I took everything that I knew from the free, took all of my learning. I still identify myself as a physiotherapist, saying to one of my PhD students, you know, why don't you tell people? And I said, if anybody tells me what are you? I'm a physio. I don't say I'm a professor in neuro rehab. I'm a physiotherapist. That's my identity. And but I went off to teach. So this next stop, this is now where we get into University Challenge. And you can see here that, didn't we do well in that version? And I thought, gosh, did no women go to university in those days? So I made myself captain. And next to Stephen Fry, but you know, because of course Stephen Fry is an alumni of Brunel University. He didn't really go to Cambridge. That's just all, you know, sort of, don't sue me. Stephen, of course you did, yeah. So, you know, anyway, so this was my next stop and where I am now. And, you know, what do I do while I'm here? Well, teaching is a big part of what I do. It's become less and less as I've become more in sort of in terms of up towards my being a professor. And, but, you know, I was teaching what I was my core love in terms of, like, say, neurology, neuroscience, all of those things. Even had to teach anatomy. It actually started to make sense then, you know, in terms of going like, oh, that's what that does. Oh, if only I'd remembered that. When I was full-time in clinical practice, I might have got my patients quicker, you know, better quicker. And then, of course, I just love seeing everybody graduate. I'm so proud of every single person that goes through, and you watch them grow from these, you know, young whippersnappers into people who are, you know, sort of proper bona fide physiotherapists that can be let loose on the public. And I can't go without saying that I have one particular person that I'm really, really, really proud of, and unfortunately, Ottman can't be with us tonight, and because he's done so brilliantly, and the Arsenal women's team have done so brilliantly, they've been and got themselves into another cup. So they've got a match. Hi, Ottman, I hope you're concentrating on your game, because he says he's going to try and follow this online, but, you know. And Ottman was just, you know, without really going into his story, he had to overcome so many different hurdles, and in his leaving card to me, he said, you know, there's not many people that get away from where I live with their lives, let alone with a degree. And now, you know, like say, look at him. And for me, this really typifies what Brunel is about. You know, Brunel is about giving everybody a chance, everybody an equal chance, regardless of where, you know, where their starting place is. So Ottman, come on, and he got us tickets, didn't he? Yeah, you know, it's always worth it in the end. I can say that I don't have to sign the bribery thing now, I'm sure. You know, so yeah, Laura and Caroline here and myself and Ellie, we went off to one of the women's matches, and first fully sold out one, and yeah, and he got us upgraded to a box. So there you go. How brilliant was that? That was perfect. We had a lovely day. So in between all of that other stuff, I do actually apply for grant money, write some papers, and undertake some research. My research, like I say, is very interdisciplinary. I've got some engineering colleagues here today, Demetrius and Victor and things. And so, you know, we work with lots of different people across the university and industry, etc. And obviously industry, NHS, biggest industry. Because I want to make my research is about wanting to be clinically relevant and practice. And so I'm going to just share a couple of quick exemplars because I shall move on. So this one, and Vicky, who was, where have you gone there, Vicky? Yeah, who's a research assistant on this one, fantastic. And you never know, one day, Vicky. And and Demetrius is here from Neurophoenix, and hopefully, Guillaume, you're online in New York. And so this really is about how we addressed a problem, which is that we know that unfortunately too many people are having strokes, few people regain a functional arm, need high intensity, high frequency, lots of repetitions to get neuroplasticity of the brain, and we need more rehab, but we haven't got enough resources, and it's also boring to keep doing the same old thing. So along came a solution, which was, you know, our clinical research experience. I couldn't do this unless I was a clinical physiotherapist. Alison, my colleague here as well, as a bona fide, you know, sort of dyed-in-the-wall neurophysio as well. We needed to be able to combine our research expertise with our clinical expertise to work with people like Demetrius and now people like Victor as well. And so you're specialist bioengineering. And then we got a grant from Innovate UK and took things forward. And here you are, a younger version of yourself. And from day one, this was developed with stroke survivors and therapists because, you know, like I say, it had to be everything going in there. And it was back in 2017 when you first arrived in that room over in the Mary Seacole building, bringing something that looked like a spider, which is why there's a spider on there, because it did look very much like a spider, and it was like, and they're trying to say, do you want to work with us? You go like, yeah, all right then. You know, Alison and I are going like, well, perhaps they seem like nice boys. Yeah, we'll you know, you give them a chance. And then we did a usability study in the labs. And then we went on and we got a, let's say the Innovate UK grant. And then we got another grant with the Stroke Association. This is where we then looked at how we could actually take this device, which has now sort of become a bit more like the one in the forefront there. It's really developed on. You know, can we get people to use it from very early after stroke, days after stroke, take it with them, learn how to use it, take them with them and take it into the community so they can become owners of their own rehabilitation alongside as an adjunct. And now it's made it across the water, and it's gone to, that was a terrible American accent, and it sounded more Australian, and it's, you know, and it's now been launched and doing very well in the States, and we're hoping that we'll be able to evaluate how it's being used in an upper limb stroke program that's part of the Medicaid, whatever one it is, over there. And so it's really just sort of shown how, you know, here we can see. You can't see very well at all because it's a bit small, but thank you, Dan, if you're listening, for sending this. But the usual average that you find in the literature about how many arm repetitions somebody does is like 32 repetitions. And this one, I think, got up to something like, I don't know, that's 1,000, the line at the top there. So, you know, that is a massive difference. And that then all drives everything and stuff. And yeah, and so thank you, Dr. Aweed, for letting us come and play in your stroke unit and take, you know, and do this research and also out into CNWL as well. Tom, you don't get away. So Dr. Tom Balchin, who's sitting up there, is a stroke survivor himself, a very young stroke survivor. But you've worked tirelessly to develop this approach to stroke rehabilitation. But you always need the evidence to be able to, you know, move things on. You know, Neurophoenix would never be able to be in America unless they had the evidence that we produced here at Brunel to be able to, you know, take that forward. It's the same for Tom, and you've spread across, you know, I think many places in the world as well. And with my other partner in crime, Professor Norris, we've sort of were part of developing that first evidence for your approach. And I never forget the fact that we used to go down on a Friday sometimes, Muriel, didn't we, and watch you know, you in action, Tom. And oh my word, I don't think I've ever made a stroke survivor sweat the way that you made them. You think like, blimey, you know, that's making them work hard. Anyway, so, you know, brilliant. It's another, like say, another approach. We don't have enough resources in the NHS. Tom is on that sort of continuum out, helping people to really, you know, keep going and keep making really good improvements. And Tom still sort of rolls me out every now and then at your training programs and stuff. So, yeah, so he's kindly come tonight. So, yes. And it's like, oh, Cherry, so could you do? Yeah, all right, Tom. Unfortunately, this amazing woman and this marvellous man can't be with us here tonight, but these different strokes, they've helped us so much with all of our research, but sadly, there's been a family bereavement, and so they've been unable to join us. But thank you anyway, VJ and John, for being amazing as well and helping with our students and helping them to get exposed to that and helping with our research as well. So 2014, I returned to the mothership, as we say. Laura employed me after I employed Laura coming from Canada when I was the boss. She then employed me, and I did a project for a year. And, well, it was supposed to be a year, and I'm still there, because then Andrea, who's the current boss, keeps me on. Hooray, thank you. I keep saying I expect the Dear John letter, but anyway, it's not come. And really, this was because I couldn't, you know, I really still needed to be in the NHS, okay? NHR clinical academic pathways didn't exist when I left, and this was my way of doing it and working backwards. And so we actually established a lot of research. We've got a really good portfolio there with the help of our amazing people like Lucy and Addie, who's played a special part in helping us in the early days. We've got a really true multidisciplinary approach to research, and it's amazing in terms of, and people like Steph forging her way through as well. And we've got a big portfolio of things going on, our own studies as well as being part of other people's studies. And I think we really were at the cutting edge of doing this back in those days. And many trusts have sort of been trying to catch up with us now. Frankie, are you here? Because I haven't seen Frankie. Oh, there you are, Frankie. Sharon and Cint, you're lucky that I don't have photographs of you yet. But our team is growing, and this is just sort of, you know, we couldn't do what we do without these people. And Addie, thank you for believing in us back in the day. Before, you're now the, you know, the Director of Research Nursing, but work for something called the CRN. And when we begged, borrowed, and went, we can do it, we can do it, we can recruit, we can do this. And Caroline Austria, I know you're not here, but you might be watching online. Thank you for putting your head above the parapet with mine. And yeah, and we did it. And that's really how it all sort of started to grow. And I'm, you know, succession planning is in progress. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, and so BPACs, you already heard about BPACs and in terms of that, and some lovely colleagues from RNOH are here because we do some, this is all about building capacity and capability and research in our colleagues in the NHS. I've also written quite a few papers and, you know, book chapters while I'm doing things as well. Who knows what I'm doing? And then also contributing towards national clinical guidelines. I was the lead national physiotherapist for the stroke guidelines in the Intercollegiate Stroke Working Party, which is the driving force of stroke care in this country. And colleagues Joe and Steve were with me in terms of we produced the first ever joint physiotherapy and occupational therapy splinting and casting guidelines, and I also led on one episode of the ataxia guidelines, then went, oh no, give that to somebody else, and then just contributed to the next ones. Oh, and then if it wasn't enough to be keeping me out of mischief, did things like, you know, ACPIN, which is the Association of Chartered Physiotherapists in Neurology. I was the right pad in my shoulder, and my left shoulder pad is sitting up there, because we just went, oh God, can we do it? I'll do it if you do it. Okay, then we'll do it. And so it was leading the biggest professional interest group in neurology, and we did that. I then somehow ended up becoming a co-founder of the International Neurological Physiotherapy Association, IMPA for short, thankfully, because somehow I was in a pub in Vancouver. It was the same Vancouver when Ray and Francis, we bumped into you in Vancouver, sort of like, oh, yeah. And anyway, it's always good to have a pint, because that's where it started, this international group, which is now spread across, it has, 22 member countries across 5 continents, to be the single voice of neurology. And God, try to set up a meeting across 5 different continents over different things. It's a nightmare. Anyway, somehow I was awarded in 2016 a fellowship for my work in stroke rehabilitation and producing the evidence and practice. And I could have been wearing my medal tonight, but I thought I'd give you a photograph instead. Not many people actually do get given these, and only 45 fellowships have been given out at that time when I got mine. And I remember sitting on the tube, opened an email, and it was saying, oh, Cherry, you've been awarded, blah, blah, blah. And I looked up and thought, who's been framed? Yeah. And then realised that actually, no, it might actually be true. And then I sat on the Met line and cried, because I thought, blimey, it's true. Really, is that what people are doing? Anyway, can't go without saying about COVID, because I am nearly there. Well done, everybody. So much of us have obviously been, involved in what's gone on. Here at the university, we were still teaching face-to-face, contrary to what was being said in the media about nobody, face-to-face and online and double, triple, whatever times because of smaller groups and things, etc. But Brunel were very good and gave me permission to go back and spend more time at the Royal Free. So I went back, and there's me looking very attractive in some of my kit. And Becky, don't think you were going to get away with it tonight without sort of some recommend thing here. Becky Portwood, I couldn't leave the Royal Free until Becky became a qualified physiotherapist, because Becky took you a while, but you got there. I think you were one of the first part-time physios on the courses in Colchester. And it was just like, come on, I got no. And so anyway, she finally qualified. So then that was the thing that I could actually then go on and leave. But she's amazing. And, you just sort of think like, I can hear Becky from anywhere in the Royal Free, because she does have a, But anyway, we were part of the SEAL team, weren't we? And go up onto ITU. And, they never let me do anything too much with a machine. But, I was good at moving people because I'm a neurophysio. And then Frankie and I also went up there and contributed through gathering research data, which then fed into all of the amazing research that was going on as well. So, So really, in the end, when it's all over, all that matters is what you've done. And I really, that's Alexandra the Great said that. And I'm trying to be up to speed with, I don't know whether it's woke, whatever. Anyway, BC era. And it's also me says that. So in 2024. And so all I say is thank you, onwards and upwards.